I'll never be sure who the visitors were who left their mark in my wheat field. I've been a rancher for 15 years, herding cattle, riding horses, and having an unpolluted sky at night where I can see the Milky Way with the naked eye. In the mornings, the only sounds I hear are the wind, the cattle, and the birds. I know the sounds and the feel of my land, and after 15 years, you notice when the slightest thing changes. One morning, the quiet wasn't peaceful, it was eerie. Ranger, one of my dogs, stood beside me on the porch, stiff as a fence post, staring toward the south wheat field. He wouldn't move even after I'd called him a few times. That was strange to begin with, but it wasn't until I reached the field and saw my crops flattened that the strangeness kicked up another gear. My first split-second thought was that a tornado had flattened part of the crop, but the sky had been clear all week, and nothing else was damaged or out of place. I contemplated for a few minutes and then went back to the house and got my drone. I sent it up and watched as the image came to light on my screen. There were shapes, circles in a curve, and sweeping lines. I was seeing geometry laid into the field like someone had drawn it with a compass the size of a football field. "What in the hell?" I said to no one, grabbed my hat, and climbed onto the ATV. The more I went into the flattened areas, the stranger it felt. The energy became palpable. I've seen photos of crop circles before, everybody has. Usually they're from England with people arguing about whether they're fake and if two old guys were out at 3 a.m. flattening crops with a wooden board on a rope. But my ranch's closest neighbor is 4 miles away, and the dogs would have alerted me to trespassers. As I stood at the boundary of one of the circles, I stopped breathing for a second. The wheat around it stood tall and normal, swaying in the wind. Inside the circle, every stalk was laid down perfectly flat, but not crushed or broken, just bent over and resting against the next one in smooth spirals. It didn't make any sense. This isn't how crops looked after being flattened. And the air felt different. My skin tingled, not painful, just charged, like the static you feel right before lightning hits nearby. The energy was like nothing I'd ever felt before. And I felt calm. Not the usual I live in the middle of nowhere calm. This was something my body recognized differently. As I stood in the center of this particular circle, I tried to take a picture on my phone, but it was going mad. Apps were opening and closing, messages were popping up and scrolling on their own. I turned it off and slipped it in my pocket, hoping I didn't need to shell out for a new phone on top of lost crop. I should have been more nervous than I was. I should have been thinking about damage and lost yield. Instead, I crouched and touched a stalk. It wasn't snapped, but it was bent right at the node. It was curved, the node was swollen, but the stalk was still alive. I was bewildered. I didn't understand how it had happened, or why the dogs hadn't alerted me, or how the crop could still be alive. After a while, I had no choice but to leave the field and go do my morning chores, feed the dogs, check on the cows, but the flattened crop haunted my thoughts. I thought back to the previous night. I had checked the fences around 10 like always. The sky was clear, it was a beautiful night. But something did come back to me. My cattle had been crowded along the north fence, all staring south toward the damaged field. Even the calves had been quiet. I had figured coyotes were nearby, but then again, the dogs would have dealt with them. Now I wondered if they had seen something I didn't, or maybe felt something I didn't. Cows are prey animals. They're very aware of their surroundings and notice things that I don't all the time. Over lunch, I put the drone footage on my laptop and took screenshots of it. The wheat spiraled clockwise in one ring, counterclockwise in the next. The shapes were intricate and would have taken people hours to do. I was in bed by 11 and awake at 6. Maybe there were people on the land, but I just didn't see or hear them, but that felt wrong. I knew there was no one here but me and the animals. I went on Facebook and put my drone footage and the stills online and captioned it, "Well, guess crop circles made it to Wyoming." I expected jokes, and I got those, sure. But within a few hours, I also got messages, a lot of messages, people asking for coordinates, people telling me to take soil samples, and one message that stuck with me: "Don't let anyone take it from you." I didn't know what that meant, but I found out soon after. Just after 9 a.m. the next day, 3 black SUVs came up my driveway. There were no county or police markings on the sides, just clean vehicles and serious-looking people stepping out like they already knew where they were going. I walked toward their vehicles, and 2 men and a woman came to greet me. The lady introduced herself with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Gregory, we're here regarding unusual agricultural activity." "You mean the circles?" They answered all my questions with questions of their own, and then asked permission to look for themselves. But they didn't wait for me to decide. They were already walking toward the field. One of the men carried equipment, handheld scanners, cameras, things I'd never seen before and didn't know how to identify. They moved confidently like they had done this before. And that's when I realized something I didn't like. None of them seemed surprised. Later, the woman handed me paperwork, compensation for crop loss. But the money was way more than that field was worth. And the catch? A confidentiality agreement. And I had to harvest the entire field today. They wanted me to erase the circles before anyone else could see them. I was to give no interviews, post nothing on social media, and not allow independent researchers on my land. I read it twice. "You're paying me to stay quiet?" Her voice was calm. "We want to avoid unnecessary attention." "Attention from who?" "From people who don't understand what they're looking at." I told her no. She nodded like she expected that. "Mr. Gregory," she said quietly, "this isn't the first formation we've documented." "How many?" I asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she told me, "These events attract stories. Stories attract trouble. We're trying to prevent that for you." I told her again I wasn't signing anything. She looked me in the eye, steely and confident. "Just know that the version of events people believe won't be up to you." That evening I went online again. My original post was gone, but as I looked through my feed, a local news page had posted an article describing the hubbub and calling it likely farm damage combined with internet exaggeration. Underneath it, people were belittling me in the comments, assuming I had mistaken weather-related crop damage for some sort of alien invasion. The local paper had never contacted me. I didn't understand how they even knew about it. It was like someone had started a campaign to discredit me. But some people had saved the video I had posted and the photos, and they had started sharing them themselves. Those same people were sending me messages asking to come to the property and conduct their own tests. They seemed genuinely interested in it and promised to share the results with me. I wanted to know what had happened, not just make it disappear. A day after that, 4 people in a pickup truck pulled up to my house during lunchtime. They came to the door and explained that they were independent researchers who had driven from 2 states away just to take some samples and some readings from my crop circles. They informed me that a black SUV was camped on the road beside my long driveway, and the people in that SUV had tried to stop them and turn them away. "Yeah, but we know our rights," the youngest guy chimed in. I walked with them to the damaged crops, and they started to take equipment out of their backpacks. I stood nearby and just waited. "Whoa," the oldest of them said, holding a device that looked like an oversized TV remote with a ball attached to the top. "Definitely some unusual energy readings." I walked over to him and he showed me, explaining that it should be in the green, but it was fluctuating between yellow and orange. Another guy showed me the Geiger counter readings, which scared the hell out of me, until he explained it was picking up ionization, not radiation, which apparently made it all fine and safe. They took soil samples, a zillion photos, and cut some pieces of wheat to take with them. They wanted to study the nodes under a microscope. As the sun was getting low and we were walking back to their truck, I asked them what they thought had happened here. The young guy grinned. "Probably aliens." The oldest guy frowned a bit and said, "We really don't know, but we aren't sure how to create the conditions we find in these formations with human technology. So it's an unknown." I nodded, and as they got ready to leave, I said, "If you talk to the spooks in the black SUV on your way out, tell them I'm still not signing." They drove off, and I stood in the stillness, wondering why my farm, and would they ever be back? Whoever it was who had done this? If you enjoyed this reading, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future stories. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. This has been Tales by Rachel, where we breathe life into every story.